A quick question, actually, I asked Michael later last year at some lunch do we were at in November, but about Key Stage 2 SATs, which we've skirted around today a bit. What's the panel's view on Key Stage 2 SATs? Should they stay or should they go? And if they go, what should they be replaced by? Especially in the week where important things are going to be happening regarding their future.
Thank you. And they're doing the knitting at the front. Oh, crocheting, I beg your pardon.
When I go back to school, I'm Jackie Schneider, part-time teacher, part-time food campaigner. When I go back to school and I go back to my staff room and I say, guess what? I was at this Times debate. I bet not a single teacher will guess that Sweden was the word repeated more than anything else tonight. I feel like I'm in another country. I can't believe, given the problems, the pressures, the challenges facing us, I just don't recognise the concerns that you're talking about. If I talk to normal teachers or ordinary classroom teachers, the sorts of things that concern us and that concern parents haven't been the things that you've talked about. Poverty is huge. Dealing with children who are in poverty and how that shouldn't curtail our expectations, but how do you do that? And the segregation in our schools is absolutely outrageous. There are areas battling against grammar schools whereby they're being judged by exactly the same criteria, but the different intakes mean different expectations. Freedom from league tables, the pressures under that, and when people talk about parents, I think you really, really underestimate the great affection and great respect many parents have with schools. They can be deeply disappointed with aspects of them, but actually there is an incredible sense of connection. It is the community school, and it makes me very cross when people make very glib comments about community, because schools are at the heart of them. But I don't just want to rant. I do have a genuine question. We have unhappy children in our schools, and an unhappy child doesn't learn. And so we have to find a way between us of actually making learning more relevant. Now, the market failed us so badly. When I started teaching 20 years ago, the market in school dinners actually condemned a generation of children to absolutely appalling quality food. Now, I know we don't like quangos, but actually I love the School Food Trust. I love Music for Life. I love some of the music sing-ups. Those things have been fantastic for children, and I would like to keep them. And I'd just like to ask, are you going to support the school meal service? Are you going to carry on with funding it? And are we going to actually listen to children? Because actually, it might not seem relevant to you, but the state of the toilets that they have to go to, the facilities... Thank
you. All right. Happy Children, School Food Trust, and I think the other one was Key Stage 2 tests. Ed, do you want to take that?
I will. Look, we have a department for children, schools and families. We aren't only an education department. Our responsibility, I believe, is to back school leaders in making sure we tackle all the barriers to progress for every child. And sometimes that's their ability to learn in the classroom, but it's also whether they come to school from a stable home environment, whether parents are taking their responsibility seriously, whether they're eating, whether they're doing exercise, whether they've got a mental health problem, all those wider issues. If you talk to head teachers about why they have breakfast clubs, they'll say, well, for some of our parents, it's really important because it means they can drop their kids off. But for other children, it's the way in which we make sure they eat before school, calm down, and are ready to learn. I think the wider issues that Jackie talks about are really, really important. This, again, I'm not sure of David's view. I think Michael's view has always been that this broader view of children's policy is a distraction. Better to go back to a more narrow education department, get Ofsted focusing on those narrower issues. If you actually care about rising standards for all children, you've got to focus on the kind of issues that Jackie campaigns about and make a massive difference to children's life chances and need to be reflected in the accountability regime. Key Stage 2 tests. As I've said it twice, so I won't say it a third time. I don't think doing these in Year 7 is the right thing to do at all. I think from accountability, legal reasons, it's madness. I think secondary school teachers marking primary school tests for primary school accountability is totally absurd. I don't believe in getting rid of the Key Stage 2 tests. I think they're very important for schools and parents. I've made some changes in testing over the last few years. I've not closed the door on further changes. With discussion with the NAHT, we're making some changes to strengthen teacher assessment. But personally, I think externally validated tests for maths and literacy at the end of Key Stage 6, which are the only one time where we actually look objectively at how children are doing and primary schools are doing, the equivalent of GCSEs at the end of secondary school, are very important and indeed. So while the systems are not set in stone, and I'm willing to look more at teacher assessment in future years, should we drop externally marked Key Stage 2 tests? In my view, absolutely not. And putting them in Year 7 for secondary schools, balmy.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I mean, our view is that we have had and have too many external tests, and that has driven too much teaching to the test. And we have campaigned for a much lower profile role, both for Key Stage 1 tests, for the phasing out of Key Stage 3 tests, and I'm very concerned about the amount of external testing between age 14 and 19 that there now is. I think that there is a real risk of a sort of factory farming approach in education. But I would not get rid of the Key Stage 2 tests. I think that there has to be some accountability in the primary school system. I've thought about Michael's suggestion about having the tests in secondary school. I think it is an idea that's been worth debating, but I reject it largely for the reasons that Ed has given. What we would like to see, because the quality of the existing marking of key stage tests has in many cases, particularly for English, been very, very poor, and the pressure in relation to teaching to the test is there, as the Alexander Review suggested, is that we would like to see more reliance upon internal assessment by existing teachers with external moderation so that the quality of those is checked, and so we make sure that the reliability of the internal assessment, which is often much better than the external assessment, is checked properly. On the questions that the lady raised in the front, I mean, you are absolutely right to bring us back to the schools and the problems that you recognise. And I recognise absolutely what you said. We all go to schools on a regular basis. And one of the most moving things, and one of the things that makes you reflect most, is often to discuss with head teachers and teachers in some of the toughest schools the social problems of the catchment of children coming into those schools. And you recognise when you have those discussions, even as a here today, gone tomorrow national politician, just how difficult it is for head teachers and teachers in so many schools, that grasping the problems that come in outside the school gate is the first challenge. And when I look at our education system and its results in this country, I don't primarily see the results of the work of head teachers and teachers. I see in our long tail of underperformance something about our society, about the extent of poverty, about the extent of family breakdown, about the extraordinary challenge that young people in this country have compared with almost any other developed country, apart from the United States of America, that has a very similar looking set of results. And that's why, as well as talking about this issue about how we deliver better leadership in these schools, which is incredibly important because we've all also been to schools that have been in these circumstances and have outperformed their catchment significantly, often because they've got bloody good leadership and bloody good teachers there. But this is the reason that we're saying that in this time of austerity, that we have made the number one priority in our spending programme education, that we have said that that money will go to the most deprived 10 to 15% of youngsters, and that the money will follow them to whichever school they're going to. And that is to make sure that what's happened in inner London, where I think, and I agree with Ed, we've got many lessons to learn from, can be translated to the rest of the country. Because in inner London, we see what happens where you get reform, where you get good quality leadership, and where you get a bloody hell of a lot of money. And the problem is that we haven't been able to replicate it, or the government hasn't replicated it in other parts of the country, which is why the gap between the performance of poor children in different areas has increased very rapidly in this country, as inner London has done better and everybody else has been left behind. Inner London's fine. The challenge is to extend that success to the rest of the country.
Thank you, Dave. Michael.